So we're back with another episode of AI Right. It's the second episode of our leadership series, and I'm delighted to be joined by the Head of Data Solutions for Royal London, David Thomson. David, thanks for joining us. It's nice to see you. How are you getting on?
You're welcome. I'm really glad to be with you. I'm getting on great.
Good. No, we had a wee conversation before you were off for the October school week about getting you on, so no, delighted to have you. So this is a new kind of segment of what we've been doing. We've been doing the podcast for a while, but we've started interviewing some of Scotland's sort of leading data and AI leaders. So probably good for you to introduce yourself to our listeners, just to give a bit of a general overview of yourself and your background and your role currently at Royal London, if that's all right.
Yeah, of course. So I head up data and AI solutions at Royal London. Royal London, for those who don't know, are a mutual life and pensions company. We've got about 8 million customers, and as part of my role, my team and I develop data products and AI products for use across the group. So it's an exciting space to be in, as you know, Chris, at the moment, and we've been kept very busy.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you have. And obviously you've gone through a period of growth, so I'm sure you've had loads of people knocking at your door. Um, but yeah, so today's episode we want to focus on about building an AI-powered mutual and how Royal London is shaping its enterprise AI strategy. So I thought we'd kick off by, I think it's probably self-explanatory, but it's what was triggered you to develop that AI strategy, and what are the kind of pillars of that?
So AI isn't new to Royal London. I should probably point that out first. And for many organisations, I would say they're in the same boat, that we've been doing AI for quite some time. In our case, maybe for about 8 to 10 years, we've had machine learning and predictive analytics running, in particular to support our kind of protection business, part of the business that offer critical illness, life assurance, those types of policies. So AI has been around in Royal London for a while. I think what's prompted this, I guess, refresh of our data and AI strategy has been, in the past couple of years, significant developments and advances in state of the art in AI and new tools and technology, specifically generative AI, bringing about a kind of step change in the capabilities of artificial intelligence. So it's put very powerful tools in the hands of many people, and so we took the opportunity to take stock, understand appetite at top of house and with our board, and test out whether or not we wanted to accelerate, and if we did want to accelerate, in what areas would we want to accelerate. Very much a kind of business driven decision, and to take advantage essentially of the new tools in the toolkit.
Very good. So there's loads of hype around generative AI, and I like how you obviously described the differences between traditional kind of machine learning and predictive modelling, but the evolution that's been on recently. How would you balance then enthusiasm for AI with practical business priorities when you talk about your position and obviously speaking to the board about implementations of various different AI capability? What is that like? Especially, I think there's a difference there coming from a mutual rather than a traditional financial services business.
There certainly is. I think, as you say, like, enthusiasm abounds everywhere at the moment, and most of it justified, but some of it, in my view, a tad overhyped. That hype's obviously getting driven by tech industry leaders from some of the big tech research houses. That then gets fueled by consultancies, vendors, and like I say, when everybody gets the tools, then there's lots of great ideas that get generated across the industry, some of which are good and some of which are not so good. And trying to get a sense of where to place your bets, is what is concrete capability to build on, is definitely a balancing act. And for us, we've got a very good relationship. You know, our team within the group data and AI office have a very good relationship with our group exec colleagues and also with the board. It's about having that conversation to make sure that people are aware that there is some hype, but there's substance underneath that hype as well.
Yeah.
And I think the key word here is grounding. I would use that term for organisations like ours and loads of others. it's important to kind of direct your energy and your resources in the right areas. And businesses already know the areas that cause them issues, and they also already know the areas where there's opportunity. So AI definitely helps address many of these, and we've got, like I said before, we've got more tools in our kit bag. Some things that were challenging before become less challenging with those new tools, but you really need to know why you're doing something, right? Having a really clear North Star helps, and for that is, and this is where it touches on our mutuality. For us, our North Star is our purpose. Like, we know why we are here and what we're aiming to do as an organisation. We're really clear on it. But all of this needs to be, as I say, grounded in the business need. What is the need of the organisation? And for us, it is what is the need of our members? What is the need of our customers? And so for us, we always start with, my team certainly always start off with a hypothesis. Before we do anything, what is it that we're trying to achieve and why are we trying to achieve that? I used to call it commercial lineage. So whenever you're starting something, why is it? What's the lineage to some commercial outcome? Obviously, we're a mutual, and so not always are we striving to cut costs or improve revenue, but we're always trying to improve the outcomes for our customers. So if you can't tie that back to any of your endeavours with AI, then you're doing the wrong thing, and it's like the AI tail wagging the dog.
Yeah, so obviously you're trying to place AI at the heart of supporting the needs of your members. What has been the kind of process then? So you talk about you're looking to implement AI where it's necessary, where it improves the business and improves the overall support that you offer your members or your customers. How have you built a plan around that? Where do you see it being implemented?
Yeah, so like I said, you start off with your value hypothesis, right? Like, where is it that we want to add value? What challenges do we have in the business? And then you kind of map that against the AI capabilities that you know are out there today and you know that are going to follow up quite quickly tomorrow. So what we've done is we've organised this AI value opportunity into four key pillars, if you like. We call them value plays, and we've got four of them. So the first is thinking about AI for everyone, right? And that means everyday productivity for all of our colleagues. And we partner with Microsoft, and we've chosen to quite aggressively roll out Copilot, M365 Copilot. And we did that quite early on. We were a very early adopter. We're very proud of the fact that we've just got shy of 90% adoption rate across Royal London, so that's near enough, just short of 5,000 colleagues picking up and using these tools. So that's our kind of first value play. Second value play is AI for automation. So that is where you're starting to embrace agentic AI to take manual effort out of processes. Some of this is a citizen-led, if you like. So we're looking at tools like Copilot Studio, and we've been running test and learns using Copilot Studio so that everybody who has an idea about how they would want to automate an element of their role, it has the ability to pick up tools and do it. But we also have what you call maybe pro code capabilities to develop bespoke solutions as well. So that's value play 2. Value play 3.
Just on value play 2, have you got the point where that's implemented and you've got adoption like where you're at a Copilot, or are you going through in that kind of phase of implementation at the moment?
With Copilot Studio, we have been running a test and learn in close collaboration with both Microsoft and another one of our delivery partners. So we rolled out some training for some people that had an idea for what they wanted to do with Copilot Studio and an agent that they wanted to build. We had about 100 people go through that training. We gave them access to a development environment. We then distilled down, in order to run a really structured test and learn, we distilled that down into a handful of use cases where we wrapped some support around them so that they could make best use of the tooling. So we gave them some advanced training. We brought in some specific support from Microsoft and another one of our partners to try and make sure that the right connectors were in place within the Copilot Studio environment. So we are live with that test and learn at the moment. It's progressing
Excellent.
really well. We've had some really great feedback. We ran a bit of a Dragon's Den session to make it feel a bit fun, and we had some of our group exec be the dragons. So we've kind of gamified it a wee bit as well, and
Very good.
that's a bit about winning hearts and minds when you introduce new tooling like Copilot Studio or Copilot more generally, making it real for people.
That be, sorry, I'm labouring in the one point here, but you're not just rolling that across your technical teams, that's ideally getting rolled across everywhere. You can automate roles from customer service to operations to finance, whatever it might be. And then it's, as you said, it's about how they adopt to that change and making sure that product supports their everyday working life, essentially.
Yeah, we think the best place to look for ideas about how to automate processes are the people who are involved in those processes today. And
Yep.
what they've not had up until now is an ability, a kind of toolkit. It's almost like a superpower, right?
Yep.
You give people some tools, you help them, and then all of a sudden you've automated some really quite cool processes across your business. And then over time, the cumulative effect of that can be quite powerful. Now, there's areas where these sorts of tools don't work, and we found that you kind of get to the limits of them. But then we've got other paths to go down. So we've been exploring using much more bespoke development environments like the Microsoft's AI Foundry to really bespoke solutions, and we're doing a lot of really quite exciting work just now in our protection business, looking at areas where we could apply AI to underwriting, for example, and that's much more bespoke. It's quite complex. It's quite it's quite a sophisticated approach that we're needing to take there. So we see it as a kind of, it's not either or. Everybody in the organisation can drive automation and improvements, but
Yep.
depending on how complex the use case is, will either allow you to do it in a kind of low code, no code fashion with things like Copilot Studio, or we'll build bespoke teams to go and configure solutions.
Perfect. So yeah, sorry, you can continue. I think you've still got point 3 and 4 to make in the plan.
Yeah, so 3 and 4, pillars 3 and 4, or value plays 3 and 4 as we call them. Number 3 is using AI to drive personalised customer experience, and we will use again a variety of techniques in order to attack that value opportunity. But we see a lot of potential for AI to help deepen customer relationships at scale.
Yep.
And then lastly, the most kind of fruity value play, if you like, is the really disruptive risks and opportunities that AI brings, where we are considering where AI would form part of our propositions to market. And that is the most kind of nascent, because there's a lot of proof points required before we would fully integrate. We've got some great ideas about how AI would play a role propositionally in our industry, but that is the high risk, high reward stuff in that fourth value play. But we're making really great strides in the first 3, I would say.
No, perfect. No, that's a really good insight, David. And I think it's interesting because we've been speaking to lots of different businesses are trying to adopt AI practices in different ways, whether it be customer service related or operations to their own office employees. But yeah, I think what obviously we're here to talk about is how you're implementing that at an enterprise level. So we talked about, or we've kind of touched upon a bit about experimenting and scaling solutions. Can you talk a wee bit about your journey and what you've come up against so far, and maybe some of the learnings that you've had during that process?
Yes, like I said at the kind of start, we've had AI operating for quite some time, but I think where you're getting at is more in the more recent developments in AI, and we were quite an early adopter. So if you think about Chat GPT 3.5 coming out latter end of 2022, we had picked up GPT and started using it as an early adopter in early 2023. And I think one of the things that stood us in really good stead is we picked some quite benign use cases to get started on. And I would definitely encourage anybody who's maybe just starting on their journey of exploring generative AI is to be quite considered about the use case that you start applying it to. You want to try and there's enough trial and error required in using the technology. What you don't need is a whole load of risk around your use case to navigate at the same time. So one of our first use cases was actually looking at how could we use generative AI and kind of agents. I mean, it was an early form of agentic AI back then, but how could we deploy that to help generate and review marketing content?
Yep.
So we had a real business challenge there in that we had consumer duty was here, and everybody was compelled to make sure that their copy and their communications were completely in line with consumer duty. So most people had a big stack of customer comms to review. And so we had something to really target and focus the AI at. And we've now scaled that. It's taken us a while to get it to scale because it was almost like the pioneer project.
Yep.
And so we were learning a lot about our own AI platform and capability. We were learning an awful lot about how the large language models behaved, how you test them. And then one of the biggest learnings that we had from that was human behavior. So when you're asking a human being who would do this themselves to then rely on or use AI to complete the task, then you get some expected behaviors and you get some unexpected behaviors. And so we have learned absolutely tons, not only technically, but also behaviourally, psychologically. We've learned an awful lot with that use case.
See, for that use case, because it's not, if it's reviewing content for you, is it got like, so it's not live to the customer, so if it breaks down, you don't have a big problem because the customer's not received communications from you that have hallucinated or haven't been personalised. So there's no mistakes in it. There's essentially, it's an internal process at that point in time. So if it breaks, there's not a massive, like, there's not any exposure essentially. Would that be?
That's right. So we made sure that the first 2 or 3 use cases, there was always a human in the loop.
Yep.
And that's definitely the case here. We used the AI here to reduce the time from content creation to approval, because all of our marketing copy goes through an approval process. And
Yep.
so we were finding that the elapsed time to go through that approval process was too long, and we wanted to reduce
Bring it
that
down.
But you weren't taking, the key thing was you weren't taking the human out of the loop, and there was always a human at the end doing the final approval, but the AI takes a lot of the effort out of doing that.
And do you think that will always be the case for you as a traditional business? Is obviously somebody that puts their customers first and at the heart of everything that you do, that is it the trust element in the AI that you're going to still have to have some type of human in the loop to make sure that everything's done the way you say it is? Or do you think the technology emerges where you could, essentially, it's not going to be necessary depending on what you're using it for?
I think it depends on the use case. You do need to take a risk-based approach to these things, right? And also the variability of generative AI is something obviously of concern, that you can't absolutely control and guarantee the outputs all the time. If you are going to apply it in a use case where you have to have a definitive answer and take a definitive action, then you need to augment the generative AI. Certainly for the next, in the short term, we believe you kind of need to augment the AI with something. It's either a human being or it's another form of technology. So we shouldn't forget the fact that, we've got deterministic models out there. We've got machine learning that makes decisions, every day across many, many industries. And I think the thing that excites me the most, really, in terms of making big impacts on our organisation, is when you combine both. When you combine deterministic approaches and probabilistic approaches in an end-to-end kind of process. And we're certainly looking at those kind of plural type solutions in areas like underwriting, where you do need to make decisions, but there's also a lot of benefit to be had in just reducing manual effort and making human beings much more productive than they are today. So I wouldn't say that we've got a hard and fast rule that says we will always have a human in the loop. We'll always take a risk-based approach, but I like one of the most solid principles we have is that there needs to be trust in the process. We are a mutual. There is nothing that gets in the way of us and good customer outcomes. That is what we're here to do. And so the trust element and being responsible with the AI is right at the top of our assessment when we're looking at a use case.
Spot on. One of my last question just around this topic was, if you had to consider your operating model for trying to embrace AI at scale, or is that not at the point where you've had to roll it out or make a difference to it at this point?
Yeah, so we've been doing a piece of work just recently, myself and my colleague Lee, who leads on AI strategy,
Yes.
looking at how will we have to adapt, or how do we have to adapt our operating model more broadly in our ways of working more broadly. One of the things that we've made a conscious effort to do is to try to centralise a few activities in order to the rollout of AI at scale in Royal London. We're looking at how we bring a number of different capabilities together into a bit of a centre of enablement. And that will be part of our op model for the next few years. It might not last forever. I hope it doesn't last forever, and actually we can, over time, you start to decentralise some of this stuff. But for the time being, as you're grappling with a technology that is the state of the art is changing, it seems, on a weekly basis at the moment. And
Yeah,
so to expect all parts of your business to be keeping up with that and to be
it's
adapting
difficult.
to it is difficult.
So that's why you hear centralised versus decentralised. If you're looking at implementing new technology into your business, you think that it's best to build a centralised unit that really specialises in that area. And as the business starts to adapt it more into each of the different departments, that's when it can start to become more decentralised, and each area can have its own aspect to it.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, the thing that I would maybe guide people on who are kind of approaching this same sort of topic is you have to do something that fits your own culture and your own business structures. There's not one size fits all. Genuinely, there's not one size fits all. You know, I've worked at very large organisations. We're about 6,000 employees, right? But I've worked at organisations at 100,000 employees. To think that they would centralise all their AI capability in one area that's not
It's not
realistic.
going
It's
to
not
happen.
right for them. Your culture, your size, and your scale, that all needs to be taken into account. We did an assessment of all of that and decided that we would centralise some, but not all, of our AI capabilities in order to help accelerate our progress. So I would say you really need to fit it to the organisation. There's not a one size fits all. I would say there's a lot of similarities to when cloud became a thing, and the reaction that most organisations, particularly in financial services, is a highly regulated industry. The response to that was to create centres of excellence for cloud adoption, and now you find that they're dissipating because all business areas tend to know what to do and how to operate effectively and responsibly. And I think there's a lot of similarities for me in AI.
It's very interesting. I'm glad you can revert back to that. Wouldn't have been too long ago, though, David. So you mentioned obviously culture and your business model influencing how organisations embrace AI. But I was wondering, when you made that point about how it impacts the culture as well, how does being a mutual shape Royal London's approach to that compared to a traditional PLC?
Yeah, I think so. It's a really good question. One of the reasons that I joined Royal London was because it was a mutual. We don't have any shareholders, or certainly we don't have typical ones anyway.
Yeah,
We're owned by our members, so that means that we focus a lot of our energy in generating good outcomes for our customers. It even influences things like how we're structured, how our performance is measured. I think it encourages thinking over a longer term horizon as well. So when you think of how if you think of how that applies to AI, there's a lot of short-term hype around AI just now, and I think in some organisations that will be generating quite a reactionary response to it, wanting to kind of jump on the bandwagon and generate some very, very quick wins
Yeah.
regardless of whether or not there's substance behind your progress. And I think what being a mutual helps us with, and certainly helps me in my role with, is it allows you the space to generate substantial gains before determining what the kind of longer term view on something is. So it also really helps with where are we going to start? And there's a lot of organisations now who are trying to embrace AI, but kind of don't really know where to start. For us, that kind of real clear North Star on customers and good customer outcomes helps us shape what use cases and ideas rise to the
You're
top
going
of
to
the
do.
backlog.
No, I think probably makes perfect sense. And then, so what I would say, obviously you've got a background in financial services. How do you see AI evolving within highly regulated industries, and then customer trust driven environments like insurances? Because obviously you offer different products, insurance products being one of them. Do you think that it's been well governed at the moment and how it's being used, or do you see that there's still need for improvements there?
I think what you're seeing is the whole world trying to adapt to a very, very powerful new technology. I think in financial services we are quite lucky in many respects that we've got a really forward-thinking regulator, a regulator that wants to embrace innovation. So you can see what the FCA are doing around regulatory sandboxes, and I think that is really super useful in bringing kind of transparency and a good degree of balance between consumer trust and innovation. I think it's pretty unlikely that any regulator in any industry is going to get ahead of the pace of change that's been driven by the companies behind the state of the art in AI, right? And I think everybody's sitting there kind of pondering what does that then mean when no regulator can keep up with that. The thing that I think will stand us in good stead in financial services is we are strongly regulated already. A lot of the regulation is outcome based. It's not necessarily focusing on the journey to get there, but it is focusing on the end outcome. And if that end outcome's not good, you need to be reacting to that. You need to be focused on that. I think that the open and ongoing consultative approach that we've got at the moment, I could see that continuing. I think it's positive, and I think it will be a combined effort really between industry players and regulators to really understand and manage the risks. It's the only way that you can really do it. It needs to be kind of close and continuous when something is changing so quickly.
Yeah.
But like I say, I think we're quite fortunate in financial services because of the regulatory environment. I think it's actually quite conducive to embracing AI well. I think other industries where you've not got such a proactive regulator might struggle, and some organisations might get a bit paralysed by that because they don't know what they can and can't do.
Yeah.
If you've got your regulator sitting alongside you, watching and learning as you are, to be honest, it's not a bad place to be just now, from my perspective.
Yeah, 100%. I think as well, the amount that we've seen financial services organisation, where there's obviously a decent hub, particularly in Scotland, but there's been huge adoption and embracing of AI within those organisations, a big part of the AI community. So if your AI professionals that are based here obviously will work in those industries. So yeah, there doesn't seem to be huge amounts of red tape or organisations really needing a lot of motivation to get involved in the sector. So no, I agree with you in that perspective. If I'm looking forward again then, so where do you see the biggest opportunities been for financial services? You can maybe obviously differentiate the likes of yourselves compared to like maybe retail banking or investment companies, but how do you see it emerging over the next sort of 5 to 10 years?
That's a long time to
Or
project
maybe
forward.
shorter
That's
then?
I think I would need to be Mystic Meg for that. I think there's huge opportunity to use AI to improve the customer offer, right, and to improve the customer experience by helping organisations such as ours and others in banking and financial services get closer to our customers and understand them much more deeply, but at scale. I think that's going to be a real key area of opportunity for us. And only me, that's a really positive end to be heading towards. I also think value for money is another area. So when you look at the ability for AI to reduce the operating costs and the cost to serve for a lot of organisations, including financial services, that the capacity that you can release through AI can be reinvested, and it can also help at the bottom line, the cost to serve. Um, Obviously there's optionality for different organisations of what they do with that, but the capacity that frees up can definitely be put to good use.
But more generally across the industry, obviously we talked about you rolling it out in different areas, your 4 pillars that you touched upon. Do you see it being utilised like that for every business, that they're going to concentrate in every aspect of their company, or can you see it there's been a huge adoption in customer service, not in financial services, but across the board, especially e-commerce led businesses first and foremost? Obviously you're talking about automating a lot of processes at the moment. That's in a lot of conversations, and then improving customer experience with the likes of personalisation. Where do you see the balance of that so far, and how that will continue?
I think from what I've seen, and when I talk to colleagues and different, across the industry, as to where have they started? I think most people have started back to front, if that makes sense. They've started at the back. They've started at where you can look internally at your operational processes and make gains there. They're typically the safest and most benign parts of your organisation to kind of focus a new technology at.
Yeah.
But there's also some experimentation at front end of businesses as well, in terms of like AI chatbots and trying to start engaging customers on a kind of our agent to your agent type basis. But I think most people have started at the kind of middle and back office, and that seems to me to be quite sensible. I also think typically when you look at major transformations in the past, I think when new technologies come in and it's had a major impact on society at large. So think about the introduction of electricity, or think about the introduction of the internet.
Yeah.
What tends to happen is that us as a race, we tend to overestimate the impact that something will have in the short term, and we tend to underestimate the impact that something will have in the longer term. So the human brain and its ability to think of really big, transformational, innovative, disruptive ideas, like it takes time. Typically, you incrementally get there. So
Yeah.
what you're seeing just now is everybody focusing on the things that seem like no-brainers, quick wins. Let's take this process that we've done this way, and can we make it a bit more efficient or effective? I think we're still to see major shifts, AI-enabled shifts. But you're starting to see a few organisations take steps in anticipation of there being major disruption in the industry. But it's natural that those types of use cases will come a bit further down the line, and everybody just focusing on what wins can we get today.
No, I couldn't agree more with you. In terms of, you've touched on this a couple of times, but probably overarching and looking back to where you're at. Obviously, you've not completed your journey and you're in the midst of that. But advice you would give to other sort of mid to large organisations about designing their AI journey, kind of making sure you look out for certain pitfalls that might be coming along the way. And I think you've touched a lot upon about going back to the hypothesis and understanding the why before you're putting anything in place. But yeah, what would be the kind of key aspects to that?
So I think there's kind of three things that come to mind for me, Chris. And the first is exactly what you've just said. Start with why. Don't let the tail wag the dog, to use that analogy, right? Don't have a solution looking for a problem. Look at where there have been problems and opportunities that have maybe been intractable before or difficult to attack, and look there. Look at those first. There are so many things that AI is capable of doing, but just because it can doesn't mean it should. And so therefore, start with the business imperative. Understand why you're doing something. And it can't just be because we've got a shiny new tool to point at it. So that would be my first thing, is ground everything in the business why. I would also say, secondly, that use trusted partners effectively. Right, we've had some really good experience with various partners to date, but what I would say is you need to learn this stuff yourself. You can't outsource AI wholesale, but partners can be very, very helpful. They are seeing use cases being solved for across many industries all at the same time in parallel. So you want to avail yourself of that
Brilliant.
kind of intelligence um, and know-how, but it shouldn't be, in my view, as you say, from a mid to large organisation where you do have resources yourself. You need to learn it yourself. You need to build up a core competence in your own people. Um, if nothing else, to then understand the plethora of vendor products and services that everybody is currently encouraging you to buy and adopt. You need to understand what they are and how they're using it. At the end of the day, if you're an organisation, it's you that's regulated. It's you that has to justify to your customers that you're using AI responsibly. If you don't understand what's in these vendor products, then you can't really do that effectively. So don't outsource AI to somebody else, would be my second point. And then the third point is don't wait. So we've been quite quick off the mark. I hear various stories across our industry and others where people are at different stages, understandably so. I would say if you're sitting there kind of hesitating and wondering whether or not you should get started, I would say the sooner you get started with it, the better, because there's lots to learn. You can't skip tons of that learning, I would say. And there's a kind of analogy that I use, and people are getting kind of bored of hearing it in my team, and it's the kind of the sushi conveyor belt, right? You go to Yo Sushi, right, and there's wee plates of food that are put in the conveyor belt, and you're watching it and you're going, oh, would I take that one? Oh, wait, there might be something better coming along in a second. There might be a better large language model that I could maybe use. OpenAI are saying they're working on this. Just pick one and
Yeah.
start eating, because the quicker that you do that, the quicker that you learn, and it is going to be fast moving for quite some time to come. So start with why, use partners effectively, and don't wait, would be my advice.
What would be a process for you like that? So obviously you talked about having to learn what it is that they're selling it to you, and then obviously if you're being regulated, making sure that you're using it appropriately. But yeah, how do you build that capability in house? What's your process for that?
So, I mean, I would say relatively straightforward. It's like anything new. You need to start by bringing in maybe a couple of people into key roles that have done it before, in some way, shape, or form, and you use that to start to build out your team. Partners are quite important as well to get you off and running, get a wee bit of critical mass. So everybody partners slightly differently, but I would use partners if you've got them that have got capability. I mean, you need to check that they've actually got capability. One thing that we've also done that is proving to be quite successful is we established a data and AI academy. So
Yeah,
we've got an internal academy-based system for people to pick up brand new skills or transition their skills over, learn how to adapt and use the AI tools, and data tools more broadly. It's not just AI. Growing your own capability is quite important, and having a strategy for that, I would say, should be a key pillar for anybody. There's going to be a lot of I would say there's going to be a lot of disruption to traditional job roles. I think that's well trailed. I don't think that's anything that's anything specific to a particular organisation. We're quite committed to helping our colleagues move through that transition, and you need to provide retraining capabilities to do that.
yes,
It's not just about buying in capability. It's not just about upskilling the people that are already there. It's a combination of both, and that the Data and AI Academy is one of the tools in our kit bag that we're using to kind of do that.
excellent. And then lastly, obviously we talked a wee bit at the start about growth. Obviously, you guys are going through a bit of an expansion plan. So yeah, that's part of that then. So obviously bringing some of this sort of the capability in house, but lots of opportunities at the moment for people that are involved in the data and AI community to work with as you go in this kind of evolution. So kind of good place to be, and obviously you've got the right plan in motion for people to come and be part of that journey.
Yeah, 100% kind of openly recruiting at the moment. We're looking for a wide variety of skills, a mix of business and tech skills, combinations of people who are native to AI. There's not that many of them that are native to it yet,
Yeah.
but certainly plenty of people that have upskilled or retrained or reskilled. There's a lot of the skills that we're looking for that have very allied to skills that have been in existence for quite some time. You know, like software developers and data engineers that have turned their focus to AI and AI solution development. But yeah, we're actively growing at the moment. There's a lot of appetite to, as I say, accelerate our AI journey. So yeah, we're welcoming all sorts of people into our team.
Brilliant. Well, listen, really good to hear. Sounds like it's a really exciting place for people that's already there to be part of, and also a really interesting prospect for some in the community here in Scotland, and obviously in London and Manchester as well. But David, really enjoyed having you on. Thanks again for your time.
I've thoroughly enjoyed it, Chris. It was great speaking to you.
Cheers.